joining me again for our second how-to build, and today we're going to be making a matching entry bench to go with the coat rack that we made last time. So we're just going to start with cutting all the pieces to the right angle and the right length. So I have this piece of wood kicking around the garage, and this is a 10-inch board, and it's almost the right length. I just need it to be 3 feet for this bench. So I'm going to just start with measuring it to the 3 feet, and then we'll cut it. So just marking it at that 36-inch mark, and we'll take it over to the chop saw. So the next thing I'm going to do is cut the pieces for the skirt. So that's the piece that goes just under the top of the bench. So for this, I'm going to use, these were 2x4s. I just ripped them down on the table saw to be 2x3 about. You can just use 2x4s. I just had a preference to do them a little bit narrower, so that's up to you. So for this bench, we are actually going to have a little bit of a tapered leg. So we are going to use 10-degree cuts for these legs. So let's take it over to the chop saw and we'll make those cuts. Okay, so you can see that the arrow is pointing right at 10 degrees, and then to lock it, I'm just going to push this handle down, and then it's not going to move on me. It's going to be locked in at the 10 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to make my first cut here, and I'm just going to make it as close to the end as I can. So it's at that 10 degrees, and I'll just make the cut. All right, so now we'll flip that over, and we'll cut the other side. So just making sure that you want them to both taper in. So you don't want them to be parallel angles. Okay, so now we're just going to measure from the longest end, and we're going to measure down to 26 inches. Now you can just, this is for the 3-foot bench, but if you're doing a different length, you can just adjust these as you need. And then again, I'm just going to line up my shadow on that mark, and I'm going to make the cut. Yeah, so as you can see, you have the little piece of wood that tapers in on both ends. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the exact same thing I did to this wood to the other piece. Alright, so I've cut the long ends of the bench skirt, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the shorter end. So I'm going to put this one back to 0, and these ones are going to be 5 inches. So I've marked it, and I'm just going to cut that. And then again, I just need one more, so I'll measure another 5 inches. And then make the cut. Okay, so lastly we need to cut the legs of the bench. So for that we're just going to be using a normal 2x4 piece of wood, and we'll go cut those. The difference on here, we're still going to use 10-inch angles, but instead of having the 2 angles cut at the trapezoid shape, we are going to do them so that they're parallel to each other. Alright, so we're going to just start with those 10-degree angles again. So this is locked in, and I'm just going to make the cut as closest to the end of the piece of wood as I can. Then I am going to measure for the legs. I'm going to do 16 inches. So I will measure from one end to here at 16 inches. Slide the board down and then measure just the top of the shadow at that mark that I made. I'll do the cut. So we have our 4 legs cut to size at the angle that we want, so they'll be sitting like this. So now we're ready to drill the pocket holes in the bench skirt so that then we can put the bench together. So I'm going to show you guys how to use the Craig jig. This is a great tool to have in any, I don't know, for any basic woodworker in their shop. It just helps you to put 2 pieces of wood together and kind of hides your holes a little bit. So I'll show you guys how I use this thing. Okay, so it comes with this drill attachment, so we're just going to put that in there. And now I need to choose what is going to be my outside, the outside side, and the inside. So just take a look. And if there's not really a nicer side, you can just pick. I'm going to lay all my insides up, and these, none of them have any big reasons why I would choose one over the other. I'm just looking, I'll just put the stickers in, or the stamps in, that makes it easier for me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place the inside piece of the wood against the rail and then just lock this in here. And you can see there's different holes that you can choose for drilling, and I like to do 2 holes just for stability, and I'm going to use the 2 outermost ones, so that's A and C, and I'll just drill right through till the tape that I've labeled. And I'll show you what that looks like. So now you're left with 2 nice pocket holes, and when you attach this to the leg, you'll just be screwing right in through here. So we'll go ahead and I'll flip that over now, and I'll do the other side. So you just lock that in and okay. So now I'm going to do the long sides of the skirt, and with the angle it does get a bit trickier, but basically you just kind of want to stand it upright, so don't rest it on that angle, and then clamp it in, and then just going to stir it again. Okay, so that's what it looks like with the pocket holes. Alright, so the last thing that we're going to do before we sand all of our pieces is just drill the holes into the skirt so that it can, we're going to drill holes so that you can screw through those holes after when you're securing it to the top of the bench. So you want to make sure that the bottom piece, so the bench is, the top will rest up here. So you want to drill holes in through the bottom. So you're going to make sure the bottom's facing up. And then I don't measure this, I just eyeball it. I'm going to do 3 holes on each board. So I'm just going to start with one in about the middle. I'll mark that, and then you don't want it too close to the end, so I'll do about there, and then about there. And now I'm going to drill through. You don't want to drill too far, because if you make your holes too deep, depending on how long of screws that you're using to secure it to the top, they'll go right through the top of your bench top. So I have measured this out so that it's going to stop about here, and that'll be the perfect depth for the length of screws that I'm going to be using. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start sanding. Again, I'm using a 120 grit sandpaper for finishing this wood. And the things that I'm going to try and do is just soften the corners, not rounding them too much, but just taking off that sharp edge, getting rid of any stamps, obviously, and then just anything that as far down as you want to go, depending on your preference for how much of the natural character of the wood that you want. Okay, so everything is sanded now, and now we're ready to start putting the base together. So you're just going to take your long end of the skirt and you're going to line it up with one of the ends of your leg. So just to make sure that they're ready, I'm going to just start with sticking the screws into the holes. I'm not drilling it in yet, I'm just getting them ready to go. I'm using here 3-inch screws, which are definitely overkill for this project, but I didn't have any that were the perfect size. I would have probably chosen maybe a 2.5, but I think I just had 1.5, which wouldn't quite be long enough. So I went with a 3-inch screw. And then I'm just going to apply some glue. Glue is one of my best friends in the wood shop. It definitely makes your tables strong. Stronger than if you just had screws. So you have some glue on the end, and then you're just going to push it together like that. And the other one. And the noise you hear is this is an impact drill. You don't have to use an impact drill, but that's what I prefer to use. All right, so now let's do the other side. I'm just going to flip it over because I'm right-handed, so I will drill with my right. And then basically we're going to do the same thing. So if you find that some glue has bubbled over, which is normal, a tip is just to take a wet rag and just try and wipe it off. It's much easier to get it off now than when it dries, and trying to sand it off can be harder to get in these corners. And if you have dried glue on your wood, your stain won't take to those parts. So it is really important to make sure that you get it off before it dries in these cracks. Okay, so now we have our one long side done. So we're ready to add one of the short sides. So I'm going to go ahead and stick in a couple screws just to get it started. For these I'm using shorter screws. These are 1 3/4 screws. So I'm just getting it started a bit. And then I'm going to add some glue. And then I'm going to place this so it's at a right angle right there. And I'm just going to hold it there, and I've put it almost to the outside. I just left a little bit of a lip. I'm just going to screw this in. Okay, I'll straighten it up again. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you do want it to make sure it's flat. And I'll put in the other screw. Okay, so I went ahead and attached the second part of the skirt to the base, and I built the other half as well. So now it's just the next step is to attach these pieces together. And I'll line it up here. It's a bit of an awkward angle, but you just you just need to do your best to get it in there. Okay. All right, and we'll do the same to the other side. So I'm just going to squirt some glue in there. And there we go. Screw it in. Okay, so because of the angle to get to the bottom screw, I actually can't get there, but like I was mentioning earlier, glue will hold this. So if I can get just the impact there, I'm going to let this dry like this, and even without that second screw on the one side, this will be plenty strong. So yeah, now I'll just let it dry, and then we'll come back and stain it. Okay, so my kids are sleeping. I've got a couple hours to do some work. And so I'm going to do the staining of the bench, the base and the top. So I'm going to be using an oil-based stain again, the same color as I did the coat rack last time, which is Provincial. It's a Minwax stain here. And I'm just going to give it a gentle stir. And then wipe that on my rag. So I still have, just like the last project, I have the rag and I have a 2-inch brush. So again, I'll just start with applying a little bit with the brush. I like to use the brush to get in the corners, but then I always wipe off, move that so you can see, wiping off the excess with my rag. So some spots will be easier to get when I flip it over. So I'll just get the easy to access spots with it this direction. And then I'll flip it over and do it on the other side. And now it's time to do the top. So again, I will start with the bottom of the top. And just one thing I wanted to remind you guys when you're putting your stain on, when you put it in with the brush, don't be afraid to be generous, because then it's going to soak down into all of the deeper grooves or nicks or whatever you have in your wood. And then really massage it in with your rag and wiping off any excess. So I just wanted to show you what it looked like when it's all finished. I love how the wood picks up different amounts of stain in different places. I think it gives it a lot of character. And yeah, now we just need to wait. I like to wait a day, and then tomorrow we'll come back and we will lacquer this. Okay, so the stain has been soaking for a day or so, and I have dusted off the pieces, and now I'm ready to start applying the lacquer. So we're using again the water-based diamond finish quick drying satin finish, and we're going to go ahead and apply it to the top and the base. I'm going to start with just doing a quick coat. This is the bottom of the top of the bench, so I'm just going to start with applying a quick coat of varnish on here. And I'll just do one coat on the bottom, and then once this dries, I'll turn it over and do it on the top. And I actually see a little hair in here. It might have been a bristle, so if you get anything like that, this stuff washes off your hands. That's why I don't wear gloves. You can just pick it off and then smooth it off with your brush. All right, moving on to the base. I like to prop it up on these sticks just so I can get right to the bottom. Okay, so the first coat is on, and now we just need to wait. We'll give it probably an hour at the most until it's ready to touch, and then I can apply the second coat. So I went ahead and did a first coat on the top of the bench top, and it's dry. I can touch it. So our next thing that we're going to do is give it a quick sand. So I just have some 400 grit sandpaper wrapped around a block, so that's very fine sandpaper. And I just quickly do kind of a once over it just to give it an extra smooth finish, and then I'm going to wipe it down with a damp rag just to get off any debris. Now my general rule for finishing surfaces is if it's a surface like a bench top or a tabletop, I will do 3 or 4 coats of the lacquer, and you just kind of see, you can just see if you need a 4th coat. For any bases that don't get direct use, I'll do 2 coats, and on the bottoms of the tabletop or bench top surfaces, I'll just do 1 coat. So that's my general rule, and I sand between coats on the bench tops and tabletops. I don't do that on the bases because it's just not necessary. You don't need to have that super smooth finish. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more coats on the top, and I'll do 1 more coat on the base, and then we'll let that dry, and then I'll show you how we just assemble the 2 together. Okay, so all the lacquer is on now, and now we're just ready to put the 2 together, the base onto the top. So I'm going to flip the top over so that the good side is down, and then we need to just get our drill ready first. And I just want to make sure that I don't screw through the top of my wood once I secure this to the bottom. Now remember, we pre-drilled these holes earlier, so all I'm going to do is hold my screw and make sure we want it to go about 1 inch into the top of the table, but we don't want it to go any further. So I'm just going to hold this here, and I'm going to mark that with a piece of tape, so that I'll just show you guys that again just to make sure it's clear, so that when I'm drilling I know I need to stop when I get to that tape mark. Okay, so now we're just going to center the base onto the top. And then we're ready to screw it down. So again, I'll be stopping at the green. And then we'll put in all the screws. So that's it. This bench is done. It'll make a great addition to any entry. Please like this video if you liked it, comment, share, question me. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.